Deep within Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, a 100-acre farm operates at peak biological efficiency. It consumes zero chemical inputs. It uses zero grid electricity. Yet, the soil here yields a caloric output that defies modern commercial averages. Most backyard growers look at a scene like this and see tradition. They see nostalgia, but they are missing the math. The Amish are not relying on folklore. They are utilizing a strict, closed-loop biological engine, an engineering matrix that can be scaled down, isolated, and deployed inside a standard 4x4 raised bed. The secret isn't a commercial additive or a proprietary fertilizer. It is a precise volumetric ratio of carbon, nitrogen, and native mineral architecture. A biological blueprint that transforms inert dirt into a self-feeding, self-contained supersoil. And if you build it correctly, your backyard plot will never require a single bag of store-bought fertilizer again. Every spring, millions of suburban homeowners participate in the same flawed ritual. They drive to a big-box garden center, load their vehicles with bright plastic bags of industrial potting mix, and dump it into a raised bed. They assume they are giving their plants life. In reality, they are filling their beds with a biological dead zone. The commercial soil industry relies on a massive deception. Those bags are predominantly composed of cheap forestry byproducts and sterile peat moss. It is highly hydrophobic material, engineered for shipping efficiency, not long-term plant health. Within 6 weeks, the meager synthetic nutrients premixed into that soil wash away entirely. The medium compacts, suffocating the roots and leaving your garden completely dependent on external intervention. This is the fertilizer trap. To keep your plants alive in this dead medium, you are forced to purchase synthetic liquid NPK fertilizers. You pour the blue chemical water into the soil. The plant receives a temporary artificial shock of nitrogen, causing weak, watery cell growth. But beneath the surface, those synthetic salts scorch the native microbiology, destroying any chance of a natural relationship between plant and earth. You have not built a garden. You have built an expensive, high-maintenance ecosystem on chemical life support. When the heat of midsummer arrives, the soil bakes into a brick, water bills skyrocket, and the plants succumb to pests because their inherent immune systems are entirely compromised. To break this cycle, we must look away from industrial shortcuts and understand the mechanical logic of a culture that has mastered the soil for centuries. To understand why the Amish method works, you have to abandon the idea of feeding plants. Plants do not eat dirt. They interact with a biological marketplace. In an off-grid system, soil is engineered as a self-repairing biological engine. The Amish have spent generations mastering the exact thermodynamic ratios required to keep that engine running indefinitely. At the core of this engine is the carbon-to-nitrogen coefficient. To trigger a healthy, thermophilic decomposition zone, where beneficial bacteria thrive and pathogens die, the biological matrix requires a strict 30-to-1 carbon-to-nitrogen ratio. Go too high on carbon and the soil locks up nitrogen, starving your crops. Go too high on nitrogen and the system turns anaerobic, off-gassing ammonia and rotting the roots. To achieve this balance flawlessly without a laboratory, the Amish use a structural volume formula. We call it the 3-to-1 biomass coefficient. 3 parts aged, structural carbon, 2 parts active, microbially dense nitrogen, and 1 part mineral-rich native subsoil. The carbon provides the structural framework and porous channels for oxygen fluid dynamics. The nitrogen fuels the rapid reproduction of aerobic bacteria. But it is that final 1 part, the mineral subsoil, that acts as the biological anchor. This mineral base is what modern potting mixes completely omit. Native subsoil contains weathered rock, silicates, and trace minerals. When blended with active carbon and nitrogen, it creates a massive surface area for a process known as the cation exchange capacity. This is the soil's hidden electrical network. It allows microscopic clay particles to hold onto vital nutrients like calcium, magnesium, and potassium, preventing them from washing away during heavy rains, and feeding them directly to the plant's root hairs via mycorrhizal fungi. Translating this large-scale agricultural blueprint into a standard backyard 4x4 raised bed requires converting these ratios into an exact, accessible volume. For a standard 8-inch deep 4x4 bed, your total target volume is roughly 11 cubic feet. To achieve the perfect 3-to-1 ratio without guessing, we use a standard 5-gallon bucket as our universal unit of measurement. The mathematics break down to 24 total buckets of raw material, 12 buckets of aged carbon, 8 buckets of active nitrogen, and 4 buckets of mineral subsoil. But you cannot simply throw these into the bed and stir. To replicate the complex layers of a natural ecosystem, we must assemble this biological engine layer by layer, building the architecture from the ground up. Step 1 is your structural foundation, the carbon base. Gather 12 buckets of carbon. In a suburban setting, this is easily sourced for free: dry, crunchy autumn leaves, shredded untreated cardboard, or clean hardwood wood chips. Dump the first 6 buckets directly onto the bottom of the bed. This coarse layer ensures proper drainage and creates a long-term carbon sink that prevents the bed from compacting over the next 3 seasons. Step 2 is the injection of the biological spark, the active nitrogen layer. You need 8 buckets total. The ideal off-grid source is aged horse or cow manure from a local stable, but you can seamlessly substitute this with a blend of 4 buckets of spent coffee grounds from a local cafe and 4 buckets of fresh, green lawn clippings. Scatter 4 buckets of this nitrogen-rich material directly over your initial carbon layer. The high concentration of moisture and nitrogen immediately begins to feed the native microbes resting on the carbon. Step 3 introduces the mineral anchor, 4 buckets of native subsoil. Do not use bagged topsoil here. Dig down 12 inches in your yard, past the root zone, until you hit the raw clay, silt, or sandy subsoil. Scatter 2 buckets of this native earth across the bed. This introduces the essential mineral platelets and native microfauna that are perfectly adapted to your local climate. It creates the physical weight needed to retain moisture during the brutal heat of July. Step 4 is the integration phase. Repeat the process with your remaining materials. Dump the final 6 buckets of carbon, the remaining 4 buckets of nitrogen, and the last 2 buckets of mineral subsoil. Once all 24 buckets are inside the bed, use a standard garden fork to gently blend the layers together, mimicking the natural churning action of a healthy earthworm population. With the physical structure fully assembled, this biological matrix is now primed and hungry. But it requires one final mechanical step to activate the engine before you plant a single seed. What you are looking at is not just a patch of dark earth. It is an act of liberation. By bypassing the commercial supply chain and engineering a balanced biological engine from free, local materials, you have effectively opted out of the industrial agricultural loop. You are no longer buying fertility. You are manufacturing it. The compounding return on this investment unfolds over seasons, not weeks. While a standard store-bought potting mix depletes its synthetic reserves and collapses into a hard, hydrophobic brick by midsummer, this Amish-inspired matrix actually improves with age. The microbes you have colonized will continue to break down the coarse carbon base, steadily releasing locked-in minerals and fixing atmospheric nitrogen day after day, year after year. Your water bills plummet because this organic sponge retains moisture with extreme mechanical efficiency. True self-reliance is never found on a retail shelf. It is engineered through a deep, respectful understanding of natural laws. When you align your backyard garden with the time-tested mathematics of the closed-loop farm, high yields become a predictable certainty rather than an expensive gamble. If you are ready to stop relying on industrial shortcuts and start mastering the low-tech engineering secrets of true homestead sovereignty, hit the subscribe button. Because our next project goes beyond the soil matrix to tackle the hidden pressure systems of backyard protection. The Amish-inspired pest control method anyone can use.